Second, sorry. Actually, I'm gonna save that to see if anybody else gets on, because I think I like your chest bar video because I think it prompts a good conversation. And I want to take that into multiple directions. So we'll start with me. Interesting lifting day. Entertaining lift. Oh God.
Oh,
Yeah, no, you entered the waiting room. Are you trying to get on? I'm gonna play it through again. I think there's for sure multiple things, and just the way I was even feeling that day, like I could tell I was not moving well. It was just one of those days that I'm surprised I even got this heavy. So it's almost a tricky one because I think there's a few things, a few directions you can go with. What's something you guys would look at first, or address first?
early arm bend.
Yeah, like pretty bad.
And then when you
That's the
landed,
weirdest part.
when you landed for the clean, like you kind of almost like you want to do like a split clean.
Yeah, right. Like this leg,
Yeah.
I would actually attack one of those two first. I would probably actually attack the landing. So let's look at that one first. Just pause it there. Yeah, I don't love that landing. These are collapsing, definitely too wide. I think it's very clear, like I didn't catch it with the muted hip, but it's very clear that I don't really want to get under. Like I want nothing to do with accidentally hitting like a half of the squat or going into a squat clean. And the lift even before this, I like bailed on it because I wasn't going to catch it high enough and I just didn't want it. This was like the first heavy lifting post open and drive. How would you address? What's a cue you could give me that to try to address and fix it?
I mean, I would say to try to sit back more when you receive the bar.
But back more and down. Yeah, that would get it done. I think it's heading in that direction, but like if we looked at this, it wouldn't be a sound squat. So it probably
No,
needs to go back more.
so yeah, so then receive it more in a squat stance. Like think about like you're almost gonna go into the squat, but you're not.
That may work. This is a tricky one because how many times have you guys tried to teach somebody to do that and it doesn't work? It's like, yeah, everyone's like, no one listens to you when I say this. So
Well,
it's a
then
hard, I think it's a very hard, like neurological thing to do, even if I want to do it.
I mean, then drop some weight.
Yeah, technically
Mhm.
drop some weight. I think there's potentially something you could do. Nothing you said is wrong. I think everything's a good answer and a right answer for sure. I think there's something you can do before taking apart the house that may help.
Maybe draw some lines and say you can't, like for your squat stance, and say you can't
Tactile.
cross these lines.
Tactile. That works really well for me. I've had a lot of success actually putting something on the floor. I always like to draw lines just because there's no trick factor. Because in the case I put plates and I do split wide, I could roll my ankle. So yeah, lines, a tactile cue, I think would be a good one. If that still doesn't work, one more. Again, you guys think through it. And I think this should be in like whether you're coach, athlete, something that you put into warm-ups, that you program intentionally with sometimes.
Just jump and land.
Well, that's what I did here, I think. A pause.
All right,
I
practice
can't.
the landing.
Yeah, like it's impossible for me to stop and probably just stay there, right? Like this position's not too bad, but if it gets any more egregious, I'm gonna have to like reposition my feet and get comfortable. Remember, pauses are always a good way to have someone find the right position if they're not in the right position. So the reason I say it in warm-ups is when we do a clean compression, we hit that, it's a good static key point, we hold them there, then we stand. I also really like, it's one of the only things that works for me when I am building in power snatch or power clean, to do an intentional pause, whether it's in programming or not, as I'm working up in mode. And as it gets a little heavier, I'll start to take the pause out, because obviously it's going to get harder, but it kind of like gives me that muscle memory and like really focused practice to, do a barbell pause, 95 pounds, 115, 135, just as I increase, putting, just a second or two in there. Doesn't have to be a long pause, I think, for it to be effective. This position here is definitely what I would address first, just because I really don't like what's happening there. I already have tight hips, so I think it is an at-risk type spot. Let's look at the other ones. So as soon as I'm passing those knees, yeah, bad early on. I like my shoulders over the bar, at least there. Let's watch the arms. This has been my new exciting experiment, because I did this with Hunter, and Hunter has the same early arm bend, and then when Hunter extends, he loses the early arm bend. So his early arm bend is literal waste of money and energy. I guess I'm stronger than that. Why? So I have this bend. I have no give. It's not my max clean. Why is it so important to address that, like Elise was saying now?
Because you already have so much tension pulling the bar, like from the knees.
So there's tension, I think, is a big part of it, and I would say it's a bad tension. Like when we say like what could be at risk here, I'm now being very explosive and very dynamic with this arm bend. And if we look at like how do biceps pop, how do biceps tear, that's getting in the realm of like being a little weird sometimes. Like there's so much force being applied in this very tiny muscle group is hanging on for dear life.
Right, because technically you're not really pulling it, right? You're going around the bar. Like you're jumping it up and you're supposed to go around the bar. So there shouldn't be so much, I guess, tension in the arms. I'm not sure if I'm using the term.
It shouldn't turn in, I get what you mean. Like I'm almost turning it into like a tiny row. And it shouldn't be a row, it should just be a momentum straight up.
Right.
So I think for the tension, like in the actual bicep and long-term health, it's not a great idea. That potentially could definitely start to have some issues arise. And then also, this is 225. I think my max power clean is 280. So like we're saying I'm probably in the 65% range. So like technically, even though this felt terrible today, this is still a lighter load, especially for one. When I do get to those like 80, 85%, I highly doubt that I would be able to maintain that tension and have as good of a transfer of energy in the extension here as with the 225. I think those arms would straighten out because it would just be too heavy of a load at that point in time to not. And I think that's why that happens to Hunter, because he gets, super heavy, and this really wasn't for him.
So, but, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you do that because you like to feel it at your hip.
Yeah.
So have you tried putting your hands a little bit wider on the bar, maybe?
That's a really good question. So you for sure can clean with a wider grip. I did that for a fairly long time. I widened my grip out on purpose so that bar was closer to my hip crease, like how I like to feel it. The flip side of it though is like you have to then go, what is that going to do to the front rack position? I already have not a great front rack position. You know, it's terrible. I have virtually zero like rotation in the shoulders. So for me, when I widen the hands, I need even more rotation, and I already basically don't have any. So it's just a front rack that's not really suitable. So I can't do it for that reason. But to your point, playing with those clean grips, as long as they're not running into the knees, can be something to have like working. Like not everybody has to be perfectly locked in, like hands outside the legs. Some people thrive with the wider grip. You guys ever watch CJ Cummings lift?
Yeah, he goes so wide.
He's young. You can't tell.
He's
He
gonna do a
recently has
snatcher.
changed. He recently has changed it a little bit, but you can't tell if he's gonna snatch or clean
Yeah,
because his hands. You're like, is that a narrow grip snatch or is it just a crazy wide clean? So he's a really good example of that. Definitely more nuancy, but that's a good question because that is a possibility. For me, I think it just goes back to when I learned how to lift. I had a cue that was like always bring the bar into your hips, and I applied that to the snatch and the clean without like the education that anatomically that barbell is not going to be in my hips, and that's okay. Like it's okay to brush upper thigh. It just needs to go up, not out. Happy with the extension though. Even though there's an arm bend, I don't leave any hips out there. I'd say.
nice. Yeah.
I looked at my setup. I think that could be substantially better. Like I'm a very fast setup person. Like I literally get there and that bar is already leaving the floor. And I would say it's a scenario of like my back is flat, but it's not in its like S curve. So there's definitely more I can pull that chest up, I think. Even though like you see the lats engaged, there needs to be, I think, way more. And I could feel that in lifting that day. Like it was one of those days that everything hurt, everything was sore, and I really just wanted like nothing to do with any movement. That's how like these cleans felt. So I would do let's go eyes up more because if I go eyes up more, I definitely probably would open that thoracic up. It looks like I'm super tight there. I don't know if you felt like it or not. Anything else you guys want to add on clean before we look at the chart?
Do you do you deadlift with that same grip position, being wider?
Actually deadlift like with my hands, you mean?
Yeah.
I actually deadlift more narrow. I do like a hair slider narrow at the feet, just so my hands don't run into it, and then where the knurling starts on the bar is pretty much where I grab for deadlift.
Same.
Like I deadlift like more like a power lift than a CrossFitter.
Yeah, when we took that course with what's his face, just Kotler, he changed my deadlift completely.
Yeah, that was a really good. We took a class
So good.
with Justin Kotler from Underdog, and I always used to grip narrow because my theory was like it's less distance to the floor, and like I typically hit back that goes up, so the less I can move, the better type thing. Not that it makes that big of a difference, but that was one of his cues. He was like, stop moving further. Like if you can have the hands narrow without them getting in the way, you're saving a half an inch of movement. He was like, that does add up. So that was one of his cues with it. He also, I really liked that like all of his strength deadlifts were like dead stops. There was no touch and goes unless that was like ordered. So if he gave you a 5x5, like you would deadlift, you would control down, bar would be on the floor, reset, and then go immediately again. And let me tell you, that was so much more challenging than
Yeah.
touch and go.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I narrow the hands up a little bit. My hips typically will be a hair higher too. when I deadlift, just a little bit, not by much. They're still definitely below the shoulders. But you can see a difference. I'll video a deadlift today, and but you can see a difference in my angle and even there as well. And then snatch, my hips are even lower. All right, let's look at it. So in the world of moving well, I'm a dumpster fire, right? Like if you look at my rack position, like I'm about to jerk 225 and I've barely got fingertips on the bar. And that's just been light for me and not addressing front rack. But like for me to get a full grip on the bar, I don't know that I've ever been able to do that from a flexibility standpoint. Like the best I get is like in my front, and if it's in my palm, I'm having a real good day. So like looking at that, like we do want to get the athletes to have that full grip. And then my elbows, you could probably take them down a hair and out, I would say, and that would help that full grip. Like I'm a little, let's see if I do adjust. I don't really, I'm a little high, but I think I'm high because I have to have that bar on the shoulders or else it would be in my wrist and there's no way I can stay there. So don't love my front rack.
You don't readjust your elbows.
Wow. I can't believe you didn't. I can't believe you pressed it up in that hand position. It's crazy.
Yeah, I always do. It's everyone that lifts with me says the same thing. They're like, we don't understand how you're able to do that. But this is actually, today wasn't a good day, but this is one of the things I'm even good at. So I can't imagine if I had my hands on the bar. Let's look at my dip because that kind of starts to break down. So the actual like vertical torso of the dip, I would like to look at it from behind because it gives me more of a clue, but I think it's fairly upright. What I don't like about it is I think I'm pretty lax when it comes to like the lats and having tension. So like the thoracic spine's almost a little soft. Instead of we're racked and like everything's really engaged. And when I like shrug up, I think I'm in a bodybuilding comp. I feel my pecs, my shoulders, my lat, everything gets tight. I wasn't doing that at all. Like there was no tension there. Look at the knees.
Yeah, that's what I noticed.
If I don't, even when I do, but if I don't actively think knees out in the drive, I always collapse. To this day, I don't know totally why. I don't know if it's a glute engagement issue or like what.
Neurologic.
Yeah, maybe. It also just feels hard for me when I do a dip like that to drive out actively the whole time. I struggle with. Because I have no grip on the bar, I would go to say I have to hit extension. Versus if I didn't hit
It'll get
extension and I tried to press, it would be impossible. So yeah, definitely an extended drive because we catch is almost the top.
I think maybe your feet were too narrow, the stance maybe, and that's why you kind of lost it a little bit.
Yeah, so when I hit this, Hunter was like, nice. And then he was like, whoa, what happened? Because you see how I get real wobbly. I think a couple things happen. If you see the landing, like at first glance, it doesn't look too bad. But if you look at this knee and then you look at this foot,
You're forward.
yeah, I don't know if it's like the glute didn't activate so the knee tracked in, or I just lost balance, but that knee is like on the inside of that foot. So things aren't stacked really well here. And then I think because that back leg, because I was able to get to a lockout position fairly high in the split, that back leg's almost straight, then that also pushes me forward. And then to put the icing on the cake, watch my torso here. See how much movement starts to happen in the midsection? Like this whole, it's like, it looks like I'm gonna stick it for a second. And you can see why that foot needs to come in, that knee's going that way. And then I think I overcorrected coming too much. And then the whole torso, the arms, you see the arms wobbling. I completely lost like all my core tension. because I started playing like dance. So not only was I think the landing a little off and the weight distribution off, it also was a loss for the jerk. I would probably start with that. Like cue, like let's make sure we stay tense the entire time and take your time with the recovery. How would you tell somebody to recover?
Front foot, back foot.
Front foot, back foot up, right? Gravity is our enemy. We want the bar up. We don't ever want the bar side. Yeah, I think I rushed. Maybe tried to rush to you.
Can you give me a little bit of like a point of performance for like the standard for the front right leg and what we should be doing? Like for example, like the right toe, the top of the right foot is like angling in a little bit. I see that pretty common. Like that's an example.
Yeah, and usually I hit that really well, and I think maybe because I wasn't feeling hot, like you see my foot is completely forward, which doesn't happen very often. But yeah, very, very slight pigeon toe in will add some good balance. We want that knee pretty much stacked over that heel. So if that knee starts to lead the way and get in front of the heel or in front of the foot, then we know that weight's taking that action forward, or they have like all the weight loaded in the front leg, and at maximal loads, that's going to be a massive issue. So slight pigeon toe in, knees lined up, knees are over the toe, but also like stacking the heel. And then that way you're further enough back that it gives you this 50-50 weight distribution when this back leg it's going to have probably a little bit more flexion. So like when you feel the load, both legs are contributing, not the knee leading the way, the back leg straight and it's kind of pushing the way. And then the last thing would be, it's hard to tell from here. I think there's a little bit of width, but I always tell people don't split jerk on a tightrope, split jerk on a train track. So if you were trying to like land on those rails, you get the width in between. And that applies some really good balance too. And that's an easy one. Like you can practice that and someone push you from the side. And if you can just be like, doesn't do anything to me, you're in a good spot. But if you start to like have to move your feet or lose your balance, then you're too narrow with it. Even if everything else is beautiful, you'll still fall over. Did I answer your question pretty good?
Yeah, it was good. Thank you.
So I don't think anybody's good at. So let's look at your chest part. So I thought this was an awesome video for a couple of reasons. Like we can take a few different angles in like what we're seeing here. Like obviously this is the open. Justin's shipping his way through. And he's just hitting like super diligent, like hits one, takes a breath, gets back up, hits another. Just right. If I'm coaching an athlete and it's something like the open, or they have an upcoming competition and whatever, and we know chest to bars are going to prompt some problem. What he's doing here is perfect, right? Makes the most of his kip, gets into this really big arch because that's going to make him a little higher, so he can like literally have contact chest to the bar and get the rep, right? So from that point of view, I think you did exactly what you needed to do for the open. Why I really like this video is it brings a good conversation. If we were coaching gymnastics, and let's say this is nothing, right? And I want to move Justin's needle to bar muscle ups and those kinds of things. We have to change this position, right? So it's got to look like a hollow. Share my whole screen because I pulled up the YouTube. That the guy does a pretty good job. There. So he's not all the way up there, but like you see the difference, like he's in that hollow now. And then if we are gonna start to translate that to a bar muscle up, that's where we need it. So if we have clients that are working toward that, I would rather that, not give in the open. Once you bring it back and do this, and I would rather do no rep if it's chest to bar workout and focus on like being in this more of a hollow position here than the big reach and getting the rep here. Like we know you have that skill now to put reps in the bank. So it's like not something we need to practice, if you win an in-house comp or a local competition, right? Being here is going to just help you translate later on. And that's what I care about. And like, whatever, if you know reps and reps, big deal. Eventually you're going to start to get the height of it. And then you go from, like a collarbone to like chest to like rib cage, top ab area. And you just start to incrementally work that down. I think this position and how people end up there in workouts, and they kind of like shift through that is part of the reason that they start to struggle with more advanced gymnastics like the bar muscle up later on when they do have the prerequisite strength and like the skill of it. They auto into this position because they've done it so many times, so many workouts. You guys have any questions or statements on either one of these?
I'm kind of curious of what it would look like at the level of the one you're showing to the right, but like not quite there. Like how? Because I'm not going to be there even. Like I'm going to be a stage below. So I'm trying to figure out.
This guy actually kind of did like a hip to bar. I don't like to use the term hip to bar because the same thing tends to happen. They go up a little more horizontal and they try to like pump the air and get their hip high enough. So I like to use the term ab to bar because it, for some reason, keeps people more into a hollow position. Let's see real quick if I just type in. Should be able to find this. Someone that's not talking too much. Let's see if this girl does. So this position here, totally fine. I would just say imagine that bar is not chin barely over. Imagine that her chin has like 2 or 3 extra inches. And that bar is almost like a clavicle or lower neck. But the position is the same. The guy in the previous video, I would say he's a lot more like lean back. He almost had this like glide tip where he would like steer over the bar when it was time for the muscle up versus like you can get fairly vertical like she was and just eventually the height just starts to increase. I'll take a video of me because that's how I like to do them. I don't like to glide. I don't like to feel teeter on my bar muscle. So it would look just like that. Just think about adding your chin 2 inches higher, basically. So you would like
whenever I do kipping pull-ups, I'm basically just trying to improve my kipping pull-up. That's
pull high, yeah, just pull higher. Like right. I tell people that all the time. Like sometimes when they're doing strict pull-ups, I'm like, don't pull to get your chin over. Pull to like the highest you can. And like sometimes you'll see the strict pull-up and like rep 1 is like this chest to bar, and then it's a little higher on the chest, and then it's like clavicle, and then it's like chin. So you go, okay, they could have done 5 with just chin versus they did 5 where they ended up having a few extra inches of pull on each one. Like that's going to make them stronger over time too. So like apply that same concept into just like that kipping pull up.
Yeah. Really
go ahead, Dee.
Something that really helps me is to look straight ahead. So right now you're like looking all the way up, like look straight ahead, and that'll help you maintain that hollow position.
That's a great cue because it takes you away from reaching your chin over the bar versus you can't if you're looking straight ahead, like Dee's saying, you can't reach your chin. Like you actually have to pull to the point where your chin is over. So that's a really good cue. Even when you have just pull up workouts, and this is like good for all of us to do, like be willing to like give this, like if you had this most strict judge in the world, like you were gonna make it so clear that your chin was over and it's almost like a low neck, like do it, apply it. Gymnastics is always a really good um thing to slow down and practice skill in a workout, you know, something to work.
And also something that I was like, I actually did for the Open this year, and it's something that I feel so dumb about that I didn't think about this before. That I used to always do my chest to bar, like trying to get very low on the bar. And all you need is to get below the clavicle. So this year I was just going right below the clavicle, and it was like less energy that I was wasting on them because I wasn't going so high.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like Justin judged me, and I would say occasionally I would do that and I would catch myself, but a lot of mine weren't that much lower than the clavicle.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people did at our gym, because there was a lot of girls that like couldn't get the chest to bar, they went supinated, and Santi like looked up the
Yeah.
rules and like,
You
You
can.
can do it whatever, however you want.
so a lot of people did RX and they did chest to bar supinated, and it's because you're incorporating a lot more bicep too, so at least you can work on that range there, and you're easily gonna get here. So that's another just various.
That and even flipping. Like I
Yeah.
coached Sarah to flip hands, because she was struggling with the jumping chest bar. Yeah, like mix things up for sure. In the case of like, in the case of training and doing what we should be doing and having variance, like that stuff we should be doing fairly often. Like we should be flipping grips and things like that. And then especially when we say like when that rope climbing workout comes up, if we're always pronated, that rope pull don't feel the same. So it's good to flip and go neutral, stuff like that. Or do like towel. You ever see like when they do the towels? I forgot what they call those. Put towel over the rig. Those are really good for rope climbs. And that goes back to definitely like local comp, like use those things. They'll get you through and get you a good reps. One other thing I just wanted to look at here, Justin, was how you jumped up. Let's take a quick.
Do more of a
So
pike.
right there, you've got a baby one. Like it's the most baby pike ever. If you just put your legs, you bent that hip more, and those legs were more out in front, that'll get you to this more aggressive arch, and you'll have a little bit more energy to come out of that arch into that pole. They call it the bad cheerleader. So that would be like on your jump up. If those feet are just in front of the rig, you'll get just a little more up to it. Like I said, that's a good thing to practice. That comes into play, I think, a lot when you start to like do bar muscle ups. You're like getting your first, when you start to die in the workout. Like sometimes I'll come off, I'll spin, and I'll jump into that pike again, so I can get a little more out of each rep when I'm just completely. Anything else you guys want to add?
Yeah, one thing I did for this that I've never done before, which actually doing the chest to bar was the kind of like the new thing. I never really have done the chest to bar before.
So it's a huge win, really.
Yeah. But I've been working on pull-ups like 3 days a week for the last, I don't know, 3 months probably or something crazy like that. So it was kind of like experiment. I was like, all right, I'm going to RX it today then. But
Do you did you feel a translation? Do you feel like that helped?
yeah, definitely my lats are finally getting stronger, and I just feel like I'm getting a lot higher. I can my kipping pull-up is usually just barely skimming my chin over. And I'm like, oh, now I'm actually getting, I can feel I'm getting way closer with my upper body to the bar. But the other big thing that I did was with my grip. So usually when I do my kipping pull-ups, I'll jump up right underneath it, readjust my hands. I'm just kind of dead hanging. And then I get into an active position, and then I go into the kip. So what I did here was I wasn't tucking my thumbs under. I try to get as much of the false grip as I possibly could.
Over.
Yeah, and I think that made a big difference. I was aiming to get like deep into the palm.
That's exactly how I am. I aim to get the bar like here, and then I kind of let it slip into place, like into the meat of my palm. And
Yeah,
that
that
that's a
helps
game.
engage the forearms and the lats with that over grip. You definitely feel stronger there.
Everything
was
goes
gonna-
down that chain.
I was gonna say too, with your kip, Justin, when you come through, like. It looks like you're like kipping for a chin, like a chin over. Just like kick your feet forward like a little bit more. So have a little bit more follow through with the kick through. So you get stronger with the hip part of the kip.
I also think like replaying this slower. As soon as you come back into the hollow, I think you can continue to like press down while pulling. Versus it's like you have this little bit of press down and it's like you just stop and then you bend the elbows and you try to pull directly vertical versus pushing down on the bar, which is going to elevate us, and then while bringing yourself to it too. Like think about applying that into your, you can apply that into your strict pull-ups and your different pull-ups. So press down, press down, press down. Now you're starting to pull, keep pressing down in this motion as well. And that's a really big one when you start to talk about the elevation and going from like a deeper chest to bar into an ab to bar into a hip to bar. Like you have to have the press down because if I'm doing a pull up, like I can only pull this so deep. How am I going to get higher? That has to go. So that may feel a lot different as well. Like for in a good
Yeah, I think I have like a neurological kind of block on that one. That's that pressing concept. I go into these kind of movements thinking of that, and it's just like I just can't get that thing to work.
Right there with you, Justin.
Have you ever done like hollow banded press downs?
No, the doesn't sound familiar. No.
I'll send a video. So it's like take a band and you put it like tie it on the rig and you lay on the floor and you hold the hollow position while you're doing it. You could technically do it without a hollow position, but I like the hollow because you're supposed to be in that position as well. And core work. And you just literally have a band and you're literally just pressing the band like to your hip and back up. It's a really good like lat activator too. So if you ever have issues with like the lats turning on, or like you just want a good pull up warm up, that can be something really good to do. But I like the translation into your gymnastics, especially like the toes and bar. But that could maybe help break that. I'll make sure to send that after.
Yeah, I think I've done that. Actually, I should start doing that more because usually what I've been doing for my warm up for like pull ups is like banded pull down, straight arm. But I like what you're saying because it gets the core more involved.
Yeah, that's the only reason I like it more. But what you're doing is still a really good one. Because our pull ups, like, it's not only a pull, there is a press. And I think that's lost sometimes in that. Like, you think about a really good pull up, you have that press down and pull, and then you like translate it. What's the opposite? Like a wall walk, straight arm strength. You want that straight arm strength. It's looking at thruster, since that was the theme of last week. What do you guys got? I've got a quick one. I've got two.
Yeah, he doesn't fully extend his hips to press the bar up.
Let's watch it because I like his aggressive.
Like that does, but the other two seemed a little like he cut it short a little bit.
I like it.
I think perhaps
The cut short almost looks like, I think he's like trying to rush the overhead position besides like that because he's about to drop the bar. And I think that's why it almost looks like he's like rushing the rep a little bit. E, what were you gonna say?
that he reminds me of the girl at my gym that kind of shakes a little bit.
Yes, I am that girl. When you showed that video, I was like, that's me.
But I think it comes down to the same thing, no? Like be a little bit more confident with.
I do think that, and like I got the chance to like chat with Justin right before this. Like we knew that this 95 was not going to be a super comfortable load for this type of work, right? Like you agree with that, right, Justin? I'm remembering that right.
Yeah, I had zero
Okay.
confidence. That's why I went 3-3-2-2 for my breaking it up.
So I do fully think that that is a huge part of it. He was like, oh shit, like this is about to be a ride I'm getting on here. And I do think that like adds a little bit to the caution, and I think you see it on the way down. Like
Yeah.
he has to explode, but like how careful is he putting it back on the shoulders? So I do think that's a big part of it. Um, I like his hip extension. I
Yeah.
think you almost have to do it because it is a heavier load, right? Like if you start to take that away, your shoulders are just going to absolutely blow up even worse. So that would be my hell yeah, good job notice. The overhead position, which we know like from history, you have tighter shoulders. That's a position that's going to kill you energy wise, right? But shoulders are a hair tighter. So there's this little bit of angling here that happens. And if that bar is even slightly on front, that's going to tax you faster. And then like it's even going to potentially like put you at risk of a no rep. I know you can get there because of the last. All of a sudden the head
Yeah.
goes through and like you see the difference there. So I think the cue I would give you is punch your head through at the top of the rep. Because even though you're moving this much more space and there's more of a range of motion, you're now going to this locked out position and everything is stacked. And if things are stacked, that means bones are supporting structures, not muscles as much. And that means you're going to save energy.
Less
So that would be
taxing.
like, yeah, yeah, exactly. That would be the thing I would try to like cue and have you like fix quickly in this. I do like your aggression. I think Elise is seeing like when you're talking about the finish. After you got that down, I would address. I think you're a little bit forward there.
Okay.
Like I think that bar could actually be like if you took it and when drew it straight down, it's in front of the toes. It looks like or like toes versus I'd rather it be obviously the feet flatter, flat. I'd rather it be more midfoot. Because I think if you're just slightly bowing there, that's also just going to tax you, and there's extra distance for no reason.
I mean, that's the theme for like every one of my overhead positions. This is why, like, even for these thrusters, I was like, all right, we're going for a little bit of a wider grip today. We'll see how it goes.
See how it goes.
And it helped. It did help, but you can see where I'm always fighting that last like 5 degrees to take it back, and it's like it
And
creates a lot
that's one.
more tension.
That's one too. Like when we talk about the the pull up, and I'm like, if you have pull ups in a workout, and like today you're like, I'm not gonna blaze these. I'm gonna slow them down to try to work on position, and I might break it up more so I can get more practice. Like you have an intent with your workout. I think sometimes the intent is like, we're gonna go ham today. I'm gonna try to win this thing. I'm gonna work at my maximal potential intensity. But I think 2 or 3 other days a week, we should have intent in some of the way that we're moving. If it's an overhead press, your intent could be, I'm gonna pause there and hold a second, and like in the hold, my eyes are forward, my head's through, and then your check is all my ribs tucked out. And those holds will help open up that position also. And then at worst case scenario, they're just gonna make you stronger. Like, yeah, the half-second pause is gonna make your workout a little tougher because you're wasting more energy about like stopping. But the long-term effect, I think, would benefit you. So like your intent could be like, I'm gonna get into that strong overhead every rep. I'm gonna give myself a 1,000 and then back down. 1,000. And now you're also like working neurologically too. Let's look at the heavy one. So that one was the 95, the first 5 rounds, the second 5 rounds. That one. So we're gonna ignore the clean. We know how this workout felt at this stage in time. We all did it. I think this one is where you see, or I shouldn't say where you see, but where you're gonna get hurt.
Oh, you want
that bar? You were about to split that bad boy. That's where you're gonna get killed if that bar is even slightly overhead. Cause like when you say the 95 load was already feeling like a heavy load, especially for this workout. And not only did we increase, but we increased 40 pounds. That's a massive jump, especially on the fatigue. So it's like, if you're gonna hit this lift, we have to be fine tuned and we have to have that thing traveling in a straight bar path, to have the chance at it. Versus if we waste any extra energy because it's becoming maximal and results, what happens. I do think, given that it feels so heavy, you did a great job staying. Like, you teeter a little, but you stayed pretty upright in the squat. Like, it wants to pull you, you can really, really see it, but you kept it there. So that's a good job on that front for sure.
Justin, do you always like, have you tried squatting with a wider stance? Just like a
I've played with it, but I have to be like really intentional when I'm doing it, because I feel like I've had other things start kind of falling apart when I've had wider stances. Like my knee starts kind of caving in or something like that, or just funky things happen but like overhead squats, for example, I take a wider stance. It definitely helps, but then I have some like knee caving in issues.
I think too, like adjusting athletes' stances and feet, like that's going to be a thing. But then you just look back on those points of performances. A cool tip I got one time from Chris Wheeler when I used to do his programming was like when you get something like a very light thrust. So it's a super light barbell or like a wall ball shot, like those types of things to cheat. And if you can maintain position, go wider because you'll like save depth a little bit. And I don't mean like not hitting a good rep, but not like doing a wall ball shot, ass to grass, and then all the way back up, like breaking parallel and being able to turn it around to save time. So that's purely from like a competitor standpoint. Like, do we need to shave seconds off for that stuff?
Yeah, and to Diana, like I watched Noah Olson's his 24.3, and God, he keeps his
wide stance.
so wide, and I was like, maybe I should try that, but I'm like, I'm not gonna do it for the open, but that's something I wanted to consider because I did watch him. Like, God, man, he makes it look effortless too.
I think with him, and obviously like don't know him, never coached him, never even worked out by him. I wouldn't say that he's efficient just by looking at it. I would be super curious what would happen if he did try to bring it in a little bit. I don't know, but like if you look at the top 5 finishers at the CrossFit Games consistently, like those groups of people, you don't see stuff like that. Like you see a lot more efficient movement typically, because at that level, like you don't have any extra energy or time to waste. So I don't love the way he stands. If he went to my level 4, I would make him. Let's look at this. I don't remember what this is.
I just feel like the reason I said that is just because it looks kind of, especially with that last one, it looks like he was having a hard time getting down in the squat. Just like his hips coming down, it looked kind of weird.
I think it may go back to the confidence,
Being
like
heavy.
being super comfortable thing, and yeah, because if you go like the 95 load was already uncomfortable, and now we just added 40 pounds, like not even physically, but psychologically, you're like, oh, so I think it could be like the hesitation you see is just that.
What is this supposed to be?
Like a medball
Medball
clean
clean
and
and jerk.
That's what yeah.
let's look at the medball. The first thing I do want to say is I think we forget about Medball cleans sometimes. And when we have somebody come to class that is super, super new, they're maybe freaking out, or maybe they're, a late master's athlete and their goal is to exercise, get off their blood pressure medication, get healthy. Medball cleans are a phenomenal tool, right?
They're a
You
fucking
introduce-
burner, dude.
Yeah, and they're hard. Yeah, they can be a great workout. You want to make them hard, just hang on and move fast. But I really like it because all of a sudden it's not this scary piece of equipment. Like even when you look at dumbbells, it's still a hard piece of equipment versus now I'm handing somebody a squishy ball. It's just much more welcoming, I would say. So like just that alone, I think that's something that we should keep in our toolboxes as coaches more often to use in scenarios like that.
It
What
was
would you guys
also
address?
some
Go ahead,
context
Justin.
too. She was just coming back from a procedure, so she couldn't have any barbell hitting like the clavicle region. And I forgot who was coaching that day, but it was a good suggestion that I was using the med ball.
That's perfect.
I know what it was. It was probably like Jason or Gina because we just got done doing the level 1, and this is something that they had us do a lot of.
Yeah, you gotta do a bunch of Medball cleans. Yeah, so that's a perfect scenario of what I'm talking about there. Let's just look at the Medball clean. What would you guys address first?
I think she could bring the ball between the arches of her feet, bring it closer.
Yeah, just like the positioning,
Yep.
like stand more of the ball. Completely agree with that. Once she starts to get into a groove and actually move, like if we're looking at setup, it's not terrible. I would want to, even though it's a med ball, have people address like the setup and go like a barbell. Because then
Yep.
we're gonna set like those skills and those habits into when we get there eventually. So like if we look at this setup, yeah, I would just slide that ball back. That would be my biggest thing. And a little toesy, but I think that's partly because the ball's all the way out there, like Lisa said. In her movement, what would you hit? Because there's a couple things.
Well, she bends
Avoid
her
the curling.
for her hips. So you gotta definitely do like the butt squeeze and shrug.
Yeah, that's where I would start. I would start with that core to extremity, like making sure those arms stay straight versus she's just very, very eager to like bring a ball up and you can see, let me pause it real quick. Like she's actually just doing a deadlift squatted bicep curl. Like the
Yep.
moment the ball's off the ground, she's already bringing it up. So I would work on the butt squeeze, like you're saying, that hip extension with the straight arms. Like I would really, really exaggerate that. I would almost, because how she's moving here is like so egregious that she's like almost bicep curling off the floor. I would almost have her do it in 2 pieces. So I would almost have her do like a jump and then bring it up. So it's like 1, 2, just to get in that habit. I'm gonna 100% just selectively ignore the frontal plane, like the med ball pad for now, while addressing.
I think
That would,
too, because a lot of people forget with the med ball clean, like, your hands are rotating
slide.
while the ball stays straight. So, you can use the stitches on one side and just be like, keep the stitches facing out. Don't rotate so the ball doesn't rotate.
There's
Just
no
the
movement.
hands, kind of,
Like a barbell.
yeah.
I always tell people if like the ball was buttered up and it's almost slippery and like that's how easy you can move, like to imagine that. Because if they don't do that, what they're automatically violating is that ball, it's a reverse curl, right? If I do a reverse curl with a barbell, it's gonna go out and around. So we violate the frontal plane and like that ball path, that bar path. That would be my next thing for sure to work on. I would say a harder one to work on, especially like in a workout.
Dropping under.
Yeah, I would probably start with that her hands would glide, so she get that, like Elise was saying. And then the next thing I would do is I would tell her She's squatting. It's not really. She's kind of doing like a power. If it was, that's what makes it a little trickier because she's kind of powering. But like, let's say this was a squat. I would tell her the ball wasn't allowed to get higher than her belly button. Because now that's going to teach her, she shrugs, she extends, and now she has to pull her body down and around to get into position versus pulling the ball up to get into position. That's a big one with the Medball. What's a good tactile cue for that you guys can use?
Grab the ball.
Hold the ball. You can literally just hold the ball in place and people can be in their shrug and manipulate themselves under without the ball ever moving. That's one of my like favorite tactile drills ever because it looks so cool when you do it. And then they're like, oh, it just clicks really, really well. But yeah, I would go hip extension and then I would address that secondary. When she does use a barbell, Justin, does she typically not finish her hips? Just out of curiosity.
It seems pretty like depending on the day.
So it's probably like with that answer, even on a good day, there's probably a little more that she can get, I would say. I think anytime you're like,
Yeah.
usually
I
if you're
agree.
questioning it, it's there.
Yeah.
That's been some of the best advice I think I've ever had is like if you think you're seeing it, you are probably seeing it. Anything you guys want to add for today? Then some videos. I'm starting to get scarcely low. I have a couple shoulder overheads you can beat. But anything you guys have, send them on over, or athletes. Like if you guys want to record any new people, that'd be awesome. I think new people or different people, I should say, are good to look at. So send those on in, and then we're gonna piggyback on Tuesday where we're talking about programming. I'm gonna add in the next two articles into the app now, and then that way we can start to get into like volume and like accessory work. Kind of keep that train going. I'm done for the anything to add. Welcome, Lisa.
I just sent you some videos. I forgot to send
Perfect,
yours.
perfect. I saw my
Your
phone light up. All right, I'll get
I
those
just sent
uploaded.
your 24.3 video.
Oh no, we don't have to play that one.
Jose, question, what time do you guys have class on Saturdays?
We have 9 a.m. and then we have open
And who
gym.
coaches? Who
Dude,
coaches
I
the
did not
Saturday?
realize, Jose, how close your gym is to my
You can
house.
walk at
It's-
least.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
really?
know.
You could come
How much
anytime.
is it, how much is a drop in?
We can get you for free.
Oh, no, come on. I like to support local gyms.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
G,
So
let's go on Saturday for sure. I'm down.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Are you gonna be coaching? Who's gonna be coaching?
mostly it's Jason or Gina, sometimes Chai, the owner. Yeah. I'm not really, I'm taking classes on Saturday. Sometimes I drop at 8 a.m., do a small workout, and then I'll be back.
Yeah, well, we're probably gonna be there on this Saturday then.
Yeah.
This Saturday?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Oh, shoot. Okay. I will try to hold as much.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay,
See you
see you
there
guys.
then.
See you guys later.
Bye.
That will see you guys.
Bye bye. Take care.